President Trump is breaking his silence on the sexual misconduct allegations against Alabama Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore. Before leaving for Mar-a-Lago for Thanksgiving, Mr. Trump made clear that he'd rather have Moore in the Senate than his Democratic opponent. Here's Margaret Brennan.
I never dated underage women, and I never engaged in sexual misconduct with anybody.
Sitting beside his wife, Alabama Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore again denied the multiple allegations of sexual misconduct against minors.
Roy Moore denies it.
Hours earlier, President Trump argued that Moore's conservative credentials should be the deciding factor for voters.
We don't need a liberal person in there, a Democrat.
Mr. Trump also cast doubt on Moore's accusers.
He said 40 years ago this did not happen.
Yet also said he welcomed recent scrutiny of misconduct allegations against other men.
Women are very special. I'm very happy it's being exposed.
Mr. Trump has characterized allegations about his own misbehavior as fake news.
I moved on her like a bitch, and she was married.
And dismissed his comments on the now infamous 2005 Access Hollywood tape.
Grab him by the I could do anything.
Now President Trump is willing to overlook the multiple allegations against Roy Moore and may even campaign for him. An endorsement at odds with leading Republicans, including Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
I believe the women, yes.
Republican Speaker Paul Ryan.
He should step aside.
And Ivanka Trump, whose criticism of Moore is now featured in an ad run by his competitor in the Alabama race.
Ivanka Trump says there's a special place in hell for people who prey on children. And I have no reason to doubt the victims' accounts.
Margaret Brennan joins us now from the White House. So, Margaret, let's start with the president's comments on Roy Moore. He, said, listen, he denies it. Roy Moore says that never happened. And he sort of did suggest that he'd rather not have a liberal in the Senate, and his preference would be that Roy Moore would be in that position. How do you characterize the president's remarks?
I'd characterize it as political expediency. The president's making clear his first priority is that he wants somebody else here on Capitol Hill, another Republican, to vote for his own agenda. And by bringing in Roy Moore, that'll help out Donald Trump from his perspective. So he is willing to overlook what are now 8 or 9 on the record allegations from women who said they suffered assault, harassment, abuse, misconduct at the hands of Roy Moore, who strongly denies all of these claims. And for the president to say what he said in the way that he did essentially says, well, if you deny it, that's good enough for me. And that's also something that the president said on a totally different topic very recently when it came to Vladimir Putin, who said, oh, Putin denies election meddling. That's good enough for me. I'm not going to press it further. I'm willing to overlook that to get what I want. So while he views this as politically expedient, perhaps useful to getting through his agenda, others would question whether that's the kind of leadership on issues like this that affect so many Americans, whether that's the right choice. He made his clear yesterday.
Well, Roy Moore is struggling, if you believe the most recent polls. How far do you think the president would take his support? Could we see him campaigning in Alabama on behalf of Roy Moore?
I think this is going to be a really interesting calculus for the president because, yes, he really needs more votes, more Republicans to vote with him on things like these big items he's promised, tax reform, ultimately these changes to health care, infrastructure. So he really he really does have a lot of attention he's paying to that sort of thing. But he's got to weigh that against, do you want to continue to cast your lot with someone who either may not win ultimately in that December election or someone who might muddy the waters because they once again kick up all these claims that the president wants to put aside, these allegations from the at least 10 women who directed allegations of misconduct against the president during the campaign. All of that once again gets stirred up because it is part of a pattern. It is part of what the president has used in terms of informing his choices on this issue. So it's really not in any way consistent. I mean, if you listen to what the president said yesterday in the course of the 5 minutes or so he spoke to reporters on his way to Mar-a-Lago, he, in the same breath as saying this backdoor endorsement of Roy Moore, then said it was a very good thing that all of these allegations of misconduct against other men are becoming public, and said it's a good thing for women. So he likes the revelations. He doesn't like it when they're against him, and he doesn't like it when they're against people who could ultimately be politically useful to him. It was interesting that the president chose not to weigh in on Democratic Senator Al Franken, those allegations against him. He also said he didn't know much about Representative Conyers, who is also facing allegations here in Washington. This is a city that is grappling with a number of sexual harassment claims right now.